it went kind of hush hush until the survivor of the Waffen-SS got a standing ovation at Parliament Hill, and it became an issue all
Yeah.
over again.
Uh,
That happened in
we,
September last year.
we remember that moment.
Mm.
That we are in, like, are we in World War III, and are we in fact close to a nuclear apocalypse, or is this more of a title than a reality?
It is very much reality, if you ask me. And like I said, not only we're seeing the overflow of the ethnic conflicts from other parts of the world into North America, but it's not just Europe where there's a chance of a world war, right? You also gotta look at China and like the whole East Asia, because for what I know, China really wants Taiwan bad. Like they want it really badly, and contrary to what the pro-Russian, pro-Chinese pundits been saying, they're in a huge trouble right now, both economically, politically. They literally self-destroyed their economy during the pandemic, and from what I heard, there really is not much way for them to get back on their feet. So
Wait, are you?
maybe,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you talking about China right now?
yeah, China, yeah.
Well, so what about all these stories that we hear that China is competing for, you know, the number one economy in the world? You just blew my mind. You're telling us that China is in fact in a bad economic state?
Yes. Obviously, they don't want to point this out to the Western world because it makes them look weaker. But yeah, economically, they're not doing well at all. And this is not really this is the point that a lot of pro Russia, pro Chinese pundits want to avoid mentioning. But I mean, there's one example. Like, there's actually a huge exodus of Chinese uh, coming out of China because they just can't live there anymore. Their standard of living has diminished so much. They see that it's actually worth taking risk, like walking all the way from Central America to the U.S. Mexico border.
Mhm.
They're willing to make that trip, risk their safety, because it's just not worth being obedient Chinese anymore.
That's a good point, because we all seen those videos. Actually, now that you mentioned it, we all seen those videos where Chinese illegal, Chinese immigrants are illegally crossing the border into the U.S. So, do you really think that China would go as far as to fight a war, let's say, with the US? Because from what I'm seeing, this is just my humble opinion, is that China's really not interested in these sort of things. Is that we, as America, as the world homogeny, we're more interested in having these these banana nations go at these big nations and try to weaken them. So what is your opinion? Do you think China would go that far?
It's possible because I don't. For me, I'm still skeptical about China invading Taiwan because because historically China has always been like a land empire. Like they never have been a naval empire like the British and the Americans have.
Exactly.
So my thinking is that they might want to secure the rear before they go with Taiwan. So like maybe they want to have like a limited or I God forbid might become like a full scale conflict, but might have like a limited conflict in Korean Peninsula of all places. So like North Korea, South Korea, and if they can get what they want by demonstration of force, then might make their invasion of Taiwan easier, and also they also have the benefit of securing their rear before they go all in on Taiwan. And historically, that has actually happened, not by the Han Chinese, but it has actually happened by the Manchurians, the indigenous tribes of Manchuria, the region that's in northern China. They
Mhm.
actually went war with Koreans first, and then they went all in on taking down the Chinese Empire in the 17th century. So that's the one historical reference that I like to mention in my, and that's actually another historical reference that I make in my book too. But
Mhm.
not as a way of when China wants to attack Korea first and then go for Taiwan after. But uh, I think I want to mention that in this
Mhm.
podcast so that more people can know about it.
Yeah, just another friendly reminder. We have today Orwell McLee, a brilliant writer that has wrote a couple of masterpieces. One, again, Canada Lost: Symptoms of a Dying Nation, and the second one's 96 Seconds to Midnight: Why Ukraine Can't Win, but How Can We Find an Exit? And I will again leave all the links in the description. You have to go get this book. Now, Orwell, on your second part of the title, why can't Ukraine win?
Well, I see this not from the amateur or armchair political scientist cross historian point of view, but I see this as a trader point of view. You can't really possibly expect people who are repeating the same old formula over and over to get better or get better outcome from whatever they're doing. And unfortunately, that's what the especially the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada has been doing for the past few decades. I mean, ever since they came to Canada, somehow escaping all the escaping all the like the punishment or the being held responsible for all the atrocities they committed throughout the war. So they, from what I, from based on my research, I learned that they actually hijacked the Ukrainian communities that were established throughout Canada. So like organizations, I mean, and ever since then they went overdrive into these myth making about the whole the I call them the Bandera generation, Second
Mhm.
World War II generations. They've been erecting statues, monuments here and there, and the one example that I mentioned in my book is it's the one that's been most publicized in Canada so far. It's the one in Oakville, Ontario. It's just outside of Toronto. People find out that in this cemetery there is this monument that that was built for the the veterans of the SS Galicia. And that's the Ukrainian unit of the Waffen-SS for those who don't know. And people find out this almost accidentally, by accident, like when was this? Like 2019 or 2018, and it was actually a huge thing, but obviously got buried. And Ukraine diaspora they picked up the Russian propaganda shield and it went kind of hush hush until the survivor of the Waffen SS got a standing ovation at Parliament Hill, and it became an issue all
Yep,
over again. Yeah,
yep.
that happened in September last year.
We remember that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was like, oh my god, like how can you guys not do a research before you bring this individual to Parliament
but
Hill of
but
all
but that's
places?
but that's the thing. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, 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 go ahead.
Do you really believe that they didn't know? Like, do we really believe that, man? That they didn't know that this guy just walked in when when there's all these government officials and presidents and things like that? Do you think they just let this guy walk in without doing the research?
Well, Pierre Elliott Trudeau's father once said the members of parliament, that's the equivalent, American, Canadian equivalent to the members of Congress in the US, they're like trained SEALs at the aquarium. So they should have known that when the Speaker of the House said that this is a veteran who fought against the Russians during the World War II. That's a dead giveaway, right? But a little, well, next thing you know, the man gets a standing ovation from all all the members of parliament, including the Pierre Polivier, the leader of the Conservative Party. And he made a big deal about it after. Only after that the news got out today. This guy was was serving in a Waffen-SS during the World War II. So it's not who you think he is.
What was the reaction of Canada? Did Canada pay attention to this at all? Like, you guys are a nation where the population is not so big. It's not like in US. Like would you say that Canada as a nation paid attention to this moment, and what was the reaction like?
Well, we did for a while, but things get forgotten very quickly in Canada. We don't really have a very long. Canadians generally, unfortunately, don't really have a long memory about things, and a lot of people don't really want to dig deep into the history of the region and the history of the Waffen-SS and the Ukrainian Waffen-SS. They might have like, general interest in learning about the World War II history because Canada was one of the Allies countries, but from my experience, like they Canadians in general, they don't really have much interest in the history of the region. And from what I've seen from my 1 month of stint in the YouTube, and people don't really want to know much about the history, but they're more interested in the fighting aspect of it. Like, oh, like is Ukraine gonna hold on to Odessa, or are the Russians gonna take it, or are they like using what weapons and this weapon and to make this kind of maneuver, that kind of maneuver? That's what's getting more people's attention, I think.
Mhm. I will say, and again, this is a reminder, man, and a disclaimer. I was born and raised in Western Ukraine, and just for everyone to know that UPA, the Ukrainian Pulsar Army, um, during the World War II time, I know people, I knew people that were witnesses to this time, and I'll be the first one to tell you that they were considered all over Western Ukraine as a terrorist group at the time. Obviously, when the Nazis first came in, they were heroes and this and that. But as time went along, a lot of grandmas and grandpas that I got a privilege to talk to back in the 90s would tell us horror stories of the things that UPA did. One of these things was the Volyn massacre. You probably know about this, where like some 60,000 people or something were massacred, stabbed to death in the time of like 3-4 days, something like that. So did you find out this history of how brutal the UPA was?
Oh yeah, the I guess the one best example that's accessible to all of us is the Polish movie. It was released in 2015 or 16, called Bohemia or Bolin or Hatred in English. That's available on YouTube. So if anyone's interested, please go check it out. It's a good movie, but be aware that it's extremely brutal. It's by far the most violent movie that I've seen in my life so far, and that's the one. That movie is the uh, most accurate depiction of what happened. Because people who were victims, they also became perpetrators. So there really is no like a clear line between the victims and the perpetrators. Unlike how we think in the West, we always think there's a good guys and bad guys, but uh, in that part of the world, it's not exactly black and white. It's more like gray.
Um, yeah, you know what the saddest thing is, that some of the people that UPA were killing uh, were people that we would today would consider Ukrainian. Such was the tribe of Lamkos, which are in eastern Poland. Um, and I have a great uncle that he was a Ukrainian descendant, but born in a Polish territory. So when the UPA came, they took him and his father. They executed the father right in front of the son. Without no, they thought that he was Polish. You understand? But he actually had roots to what we would now consider as Ukrainian, and this is why the people from that time, when they related these stories, they said that they considered them as a terrorist group because they would sometimes come into the villages, kill people, rape people, and burn the village down. um what do you think that the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada, are they blind to these facts, or do they truly believe in the stories that they have been told?
Uh, I would say everyone believes into this myth, but from what I can tell is that they're actually looking the other way for now because they're so fixated on what's happening in Ukraine. They have to like do whatever it takes to support the Ukrainian cause, although they might be doing more harm than good to Ukrainian cause by doing what they're doing. But
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you expand on that, because you mentioned this in the email and I thought it was brilliant when you said that they are doing more harm than good by, what we would say support. Could you please expand on that thought?
well, one example that I already mentioned is the UPA flag, the red and black flag of UPA. That was their symbol and their battle flag. And I see, well, from a non-Ukrainian point of view, if I see people bring out these symbols of a organization that which are like well over hundred thousands of well over 100,000 Poles, and of course they before they become UPA, they were part of the many of the members of UPA were members of the Nazi battalion. They did not one of the Ukrainian units set up by the Nazis, and they also took they played their they sure their they sure played their part in the Holocaust in Ukraine. And when I see that, like that's like saying that there are definitely Nazis, Ukrainian Nazis, both here and in Ukraine, and it's like whatever you guys are doing with by whatever you guys think you're gonna accomplish by waving these symbols in the public, it's really not helping your cause. It's actually destroying and weakening your narrative and your cause at the same time.
So, do you think that in the conflict that we have had since 2022, I'm not going back to 2014,
Mhm.
do you think that the diasporas in across, in the West, in Canada and US, do you think that they are the ones that are kind of feeding the logs to the fire?
I think so. Because the Russian embassy, for example, they mentioned several times over and over about the Nazi collaborator, Ukrainian Nazi collaborator monuments in Canada. There's another one in Edmonton, Alberta. That's there's two that I know of. One's the monument for the 14th Waffen-SS, the Waffen-SS Galicia, and the Ukrainian Waffen-SS unit, and the other one is the statue of Roman Shkevich.
Mhm.
So, and the Russians have been using these as their sources for their propaganda campaign against Ukraine.